From Ronald McDonald's cardboard masks to stepdad watches, here are the scariest toys found at McDonald's Happy Meals. When you were a kid, you used to go to your local McDonald's every now and then with your parents, and every time you would order a Happy Meal, hoping to find a new toy, right? But one day, you were surprised to find in your box that. Well, it was one of the little Halloween buckets first introduced by McDonald's in 1986, with scary faces drawn on it. But you didn't have much choice, so you wisely placed this box among your other toys. Sure, you were happy to have expanded your Happy Meal toy collection, but seeing that bucket every day only made you more and more afraid. Fortunately, that fear disappeared as soon as you started using it to store your candy. In the end, this object did serve a purpose despite its terrifying side. And in fact, over the years, it has become much less frightening thanks to its design, which has been redesigned by McDonald's. Although you still have a bad memory of it. Many parents take their kids to McDonald's for a Happy Meal, hoping that they'll find a nice little gift in the box that might make them happy. But in the mid-1990s, many parents were surprised to discover that McDonald's was offering Sky Dancer dolls to little girls. In case you're not familiar with them, they are dolls made of hard plastic that can fly through the air when a string is pulled. Of course, these dolls were among the so-called dangerous toys, both for children and adults, because they could hurt anyone in the face or eye. Despite their skepticism, these parents still let their daughters play with these Happy Meal Sky Dancers, and they were very happy about it, because nothing made them happier than to see their children having fun with these dolls they loved so much. But sometimes their joy turned into a nightmare when the dolls hurt them or their children. But today, those parents can breathe a sigh of relief because the Sky Dancer dolls have been taken off the market, and McDonald's no longer offers them in Happy Meal boxes. However, some parents are still traumatized by the toy. Every child who lived in the 1970s loved to go to McDonald's for a good Happy Meal. But more than that, their greatest wish was to find a nice gift in their box. However, sometimes they were disappointed because the Happy Meal toys weren't always as nice as today's. But back then in 1974, many of these children experienced the biggest scare of their lives when they came across Ronald McDonald, the famous McDonald's clown. I don't need to tell you that many children have a phobia of clowns, and those in the 70s were no exception. Still, they made do with what they had in their hands, and some of them, especially the braver ones, managed to take a look at the scary cardboard mask and even have a little fun with it. However, this sometimes had a negative impact on their sleep, because these children had nightmares at night dreaming about the mask. No more fun. Luckily, most of these children always came to understand that not all clowns are evil, and that Ronald McDonald is far from being a scary man. And although they are now in their 50s and 60s, some of them have never forgotten Ronald McDonald's terrifying mask from Happy Meal. McDonald's is always coming up with toys and small gifts for its youngest customers. Of course, the fast food chain wants to offer items that appeal to all children. However, it turns out that McDonald's is sometimes short of ideas, but that's no problem. The restaurant chain can always draw inspiration and ideas from certain productions that have been successful with young people. We all remember, for example, the Power Rangers, Spider-Man, and Shark Tale figurines. Remember, the animated movie Shark Tale was released in 2004, and McDonald's had the ingenious idea to develop a jellyfish figurine representing one of the characters of this movie. And here is the result. McDonald's succeeded in designing its figurine, but critics were quick to point out that the toy was anything but attractive. Not only was its design frightening, but it also had nothing in common with the jellyfish character. Faced with this situation, the restaurant chain stopped putting the toy in its Happy Meal boxes, and that was that. The story is now in the past, yes, but McDonald's may have turned the page, but the scary figurine has somewhat damaged the image of its Happy Meal among its young customers. For its Happy Meal, McDonald's has made a habit of bringing out somewhat special toys for Halloween, just to make things a little more fun, but not too terrifying for kids. And of course, designing toys that are both fun and not scary for Halloween is not always easy for the restaurant chain. However, McDonald's always has the ideas for this, and in 1998, it decided to transform one of its most popular characters, the famous Hamburglar. By adding a green witch's mask and a spider on his face, McDonald's managed to dress up its character for Halloween. But on the other hand, this invention was a big failure for the chain, because this figurine was simply scary for children. And it's not only those poor kids who think so. One more failure for McDonald's. But it can happen to everyone to make a mistake, and McDonald's is not left out. Besides, the chain has long since thrown this toy and all this history into the dustbin, but at least it learned a lesson and no longer dares to design such objects in any way. Imagine that a child is in McDonald's and has a craving for nuggets. But as he opens his Happy Meal box, he finds not only his favorite pieces of fried chicken, but also a strange object he can't identify. Curious, the child shows it to his parents and finally gets an answer to his many questions. Yes, it's a Mcnugget Buddy, a kind of McNugget with eyes, a mouth, clothes, and which can move and even speak. In short, a McNugget that is anything but edible. The child then looks at his McNuggets, the real ones, and suddenly doesn't really want to eat them anymore. Now that he knows what this toy is, he is afraid that his little chicken pieces will start to move and talk too. The sight of these objects has simply ruined his appetite, not to mention the sudden fear he must have felt. Sure, this child will still finish his menu, but he may never order McNuggets again. He was terrified of this Happy Meal gift. Almost all children love stuffed animals, and everyone who went to McDonald's hoped to find a nice little stuffed animal in their Happy Meal box one day. However, these little ones were very surprised when McDonald's decided to put Furbies in their boxes, a kind of electronic robotic plush that could react and talk, and that had to be taken care of, a stuffed animal like no other. So the children took care of their Furbies as best they could, and they demanded a lot of attention. If they didn't have a normal stuffed animal, these little ones were nevertheless happy to finally have the McDonald's stuffed animal they were dreaming of. But this gift quickly turned into a real nightmare for them when their Furby started to talk during the night with a terrifying voice, waking them up with a start. Scary! Despite their bright colors and cute appearance, the Furbies suddenly became little demons that prevented the children from going back to sleep. To have peace, these children simply got rid of their Furbies to forget them forever. However, some of them still haven't forgotten those nightmarish stuffed animals and their terrifying voices, even though they are adults now. Many children love construction games and always want to receive toys as gifts that allow them to build different objects. One example is Popoids, the famous toys that came out in the 80s that consisted of large, collapsible plastic tubes. But when they found out that McDonald's offered Popoids and Happy Meals, these kids were even more surprised to find that it was a much smaller version of the original toy. Even so, these kids didn't hesitate to use their new toy, but even though they were able to build something with the plastic tubes, they quickly got bored with the McDonald's version of the game, which was, dare we say, too boring for them. These children preferred to play something else that was much more interesting, and they ended up forgetting about the Popoids for good. That must have made them disappointed with McDonald's for a long time. It goes without saying that good parents do what they think is best for their children. They want their children to have everything they need, to have fun, and above all, to be on their best behavior. But a few years ago, some McDonald's parents were disconcerted to find that their children had a Happy Meal toy that could teach them some questionable language. This toy was none other than a Minions figurine, offered by McDonald's in its children's menus. How could McDonald's do this? Faced with this embarrassing situation, some parents did not hesitate to share this problem on YouTube to denounce this toy. Of course, their videos quickly went viral on the web and didn't take long to make the internet users react. But in return, these parents had to face many criticisms from some internet users, but also counter opinions, including the one from McDonald's, who replied that it was only the well-known language of Minions and nothing else. This story created a bit of controversy. Nevertheless, these parents could congratulate themselves for having drawn the attention of the restaurant chain, hoping that the choice of Happy Meal toys will be more judicious in the future. Not sure they can forget this minion. McDonald's has always had a tendency to give its young customers special little presents that evoke a particular event, so it's only natural that the fast food chain wanted to give children step-ed watches, smartwatches to count their steps in 2016 on the occasion of the Rio Olympic Games. Of course, the manufacture of such objects is not an obvious thing and requires a rather fussy technological know-how. But McDonald's decided to hire a manufacturer to design these watches, which it finally obtained and placed it in its Happy Meal menus, to the delight of children. But what was supposed to be a success quickly turned into a huge failure, as the step-ed watches quickly had negative consequences for the restaurant chain. Indeed, according to a number of children's parents, the latter suffered from various skin problems, possibly due to the wearing of these watches, which pushed McDonald's to recall these objects and to remove them from its Happy Meal menus. Thanks to this action, McDonald's was able to improve its image with parents. However, it can be said that this experience has pushed the chain to become even more demanding towards its toy suppliers. These were 10 scary toys that McDonald's used to include in its Happy Meal menus. What do you think of all these items? Have you ever found a scary toy in your Happy Meal as a child? Tell us about it in the comments. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.